Now, there is what I didn't like. And that is what happened on the actual day that the radio station and I broke up. I showed up to work on July 31st thinking there would be a radio show. I expected to host a radio show. I had cut clips that day, which again goes back to the grind. All those audio cuts, all those, for the most part, that was me producing and essentially managing every day my own show. And then Ian, I loved Ian and I still love Ian. During the show, Ian was as good as anybody at coming up with stuff and catching things on the fly and cutting it up. But when it came to just the day-to-day, I felt like I had to do that because I had to hear the audio to know what it was I was going to be talking about. I wasn't good at somebody telling me, oh, we've got a soundbite of Brian Callahan saying, like, I need to hear it. I need to know it. I need to feel the context of it. So I did all that shit myself. So I cut clips from the John Robinson interview that Chase and Joe did that day. I mean, I thought I was going to work to host a show. So Chase asked me if I could come in. Now, I didn't really go to the radio station to do the show much. I did it from home. I'm sure that rankled some feathers, but I was doing 4 hours. Everybody else was doing 3. I had built a studio in my house. I mean, hey, guys, it's 2025, and I was working without a contract. I'll work from home. So Chase had texted me. He asked me if I could come in, which I did. So when I go in there, I knock on the door to the general manager's office. It's Chase and Sean Fort, the general manager. And Bud Walters comes up the stairs. And again, I've worked for Bud Walters now for 10 years. And I do. I love that man. And I'll always love that man. But I guess they had taken it upon themselves to just decide they weren't going to get a deal done. And they wanted to move forward with a new lineup because it was football season. Now I asked them, I said, what's your new lineup going to be? Like, so what's this, what's this new lineup you guys are so excited about for football season? What's this? I'm thinking in my head, like, is it going to be Kaharski? Is it going to be TD? Is it going to be, what's it going to? And then 5 minutes after I walked out of the room, they wouldn't tell me what the lineup was going to be, but 5 minutes after I walked out of the room, apparently it all leaked out and I knew what it was going to be. And it was Jake Lyman. And let me say this, it was Jake going into the mornings and then the other shows moving up. I love Jake. And Jake's a very talented broadcaster. Jake is a great kid. He really is. And Jake texted me and said, hey, I have been told I was going into the lineup. I didn't know that was going to, and I texted Jake back and I was like, Jake, go get him, babe. Like this wasn't about you. This wasn't about me. This wasn't about, but it's not exactly like they brought in Colin Cowherd or paid Colin Cowherd prices. So I kind of got it. When I saw what the new lineup was, I was like, okay, I got it. But that's not what pissed me off. I think what really pissed me off was, had we agreed we weren't going to see eye to eye on a new contract, fine. I get it. And I would have walked away. If they had said, hey, we cannot pay you $1 more, so we're not going to sign you to a new contract, I would have left the station. But what happened to the goodbye show they told me about? 10 years? Very loyal audience? The highs and the lows that we went through together? What happened to that goodbye show? And then, as I was in the meeting with those guys, we had an agreement that we would hold off on making any announcements until Friday. This was Thursday. And they said, hey, don't leave the room and don't go out tweeting and say, hey, I've left the station. Don't go running to the paper. Don't go whatever. We're going to announce this tomorrow. And I said, okay. Because it is pretty big news. And I thought, hey, this is the kind of news that some people probably need to know before everybody else does. So I was in agreement with them about how we'll handle this. Today, we'll just act like I was sick or I was out or whatever. And then tomorrow we'll make an announcement. But apparently that's not what happened. Because as I said, I called my girlfriend first, and by the time I was off the phone with her, I was getting text messages. I was getting people from the other station calling me saying, what happened? And I'm like, what happened? I thought this was going to all go down tomorrow. So I promised I wouldn't walk out the door and start leaking any info, and I hadn't, which meant the leaks weren't coming from me. So now I've got to craft a statement as soon as possible. People are starting to speculate about what went down, who said what I got to talk to my parents. I got to talk to my agent. I texted my boss at Sirius. I said, hey, can you give me a buzz when you get a chance? And this guy's pretty busy. Today, he launched Stephen A. Smith's new show. And he launched a new show with Katie Nolan. So this is a guy who's pretty busy. And so now I'm texting him saying, hey, can you buzz me when you get a chance? And he calls me back and he says he immediately wants to know what's happened because the news has already hit. And I'm sitting there thinking, I thought we had an agreement that we weren't going to discuss any of this until Friday. And now I'm on my heels having to figure out what all went down. And the leaks didn't come from me. So I come to find out what had happened was, I guess they didn't have a fill-in show ready that day. So they ran ESPN radio, which was an automatic red flag to anybody listening. It's the summer. If you knew that you were going to that day in the contract negotiations because you didn't think you could pay me any more money and you didn't think that I would take a deal and you wanted to launch your new lineup, fine. But they didn't have a fill-in show ready, so they ran ESPN radio. Then people went to the website. And apparently before I had even left the building, I was completely scrubbed of the website. So now it looks like something fishy had gone down. And that really pissed me off. But at the same time, I actually think I found some comfort in that. Because the truth was, when I think about what we built at 1025, the people who I think really built that station and who had turned it into what was, for the most part, weren't there anymore. Ryan Porth was in Chicago, our former program director. Jana Hampton, who created Jared and the GM, works for Dave Ramsey. Dennis Guazdon, who was the general manager when we started Robbie and Rex Road with Porth, he was gone too. And we made some internal promotions at the radio station that were done, I think, out of convenience over qualifications. And just seeing how badly, I guess, they botched their own plan, it relieved me that I was no longer there having to deal with that anymore. So that really pissed me off. And then there was one other thing that really, really irked me. I didn't do any interviews for a while talking about what happened with me at the station or what was next or anything like that. I was on Sirius XM pretty much every day after I left the radio station. And I told the bosses at Sirius, like, hey, somebody might call in. If they ask, I'm just going to move on and go to the next point or whatever. But I put out a statement and I felt as if it was the truth. And then I saw an article in the Tennessean. Why Jared Stillman left 1025 the game. And there was a quote from the radio station, and they're from Chase McCabe. It's a very nice quote. But I was really disappointed that quote didn't come from Bud Walters. Again, this guy had employed me for 10 years. But when I had real shit going on in my life, it was Bud Walters who I went to talk to. Lindsay was so excited when we were pregnant with Jackson. She wanted so badly to post. We went to the Bahamas for vacation. Ran into Brian Callahan and his family down there. Lindsay let it slip that we were having a child when we were still kind of keeping that to ourselves. But we took photos, pregnancy photos or whatever. And Lindsay had a post and she was ready. And I said, let's put it off. Let's wait. And then when I got back from the Bahamas or Canada or something that summer, I told her she could announce it. But I said, wait, I got to talk to Bud Walters first. We cannot make an announcement if I don't talk to Bud Walters. When I had a discussion with another radio station in town, you can probably guess who, the one thing I said to them was, no matter what happens in any discussion, I am not going to screw that man over. And I stand by that today. And if people say bad things about Bud Walters, I'll defend him to the hill. But it disappointed me that the quote in the paper didn't come from him. And I understand he hires people that work for him, that I get it. But I guess I looked at the 10 years like I wasn't just some pawn in the organization. And apparently, I guess it was. Or at least that's how it felt. And so those two things, really three, the promise of a goodbye show and the lack of one, the botched plan on rolling this out, and then the fact that the owner wasn't the one who made the comments, that's what really irked me in the end. Other than that, it was 10 great years. There's one day that I wish maybe I'd handled a little bit better in the past. But I've been there for 10 years. And how can I gossip about everybody else's sensitive business situations and then not be able to handle my own? And that one day that I wish we had handled a little bit better, I kept thinking in my head, they told me they wanted me to have a goodbye show. Then they told me they wanted me to look for other jobs, and if I got it, they were going to celebrate it. Then they told me that they felt threatened that I was looking at other jobs. I don't know. Was that like a test or something? I don't know. But you tell me you're going to give me a goodbye show, and then you don't give me a goodbye show. And then you tell me, well, you can record 2 minutes or something, and we'll play that. And I actually thought about doing that because, damn it, I love the audience. But then I said, no, we're broken up. You don't get to decide what you do with me and what I say to the people who listen to the show. But I think what really disappointed me was, while in radio, they really don't give goodbye shows because there's a fear that if you give a goodbye show, there's a huge fear that they're going to go on the air and say, fuck them. If you didn't think I could handle that, you didn't think I could do a goodbye show, you didn't think I could say, hey, you know, we just were unable to come to a contract agreement, but I've loved my time here and I'm thankful for all the people that I've worked with over the years. And it's been a blast of a 10 years. And, you know, Floyd and everything he meant, and Caroline and everything she meant, and Ian and everything he meant, and this whole crew. If you didn't think I could handle that professionally, especially when I am already on Sirius XM. So if I say something off the wall crazy, like that's probably going to get me in trouble there, then maybe I wasn't the guy that should have been running your afternoons for 10 years. Maybe you had the wrong guy. Because at the end of the day, I felt like they made a business decision look personal. And again, in full transparency, I hugged Bud Walters on the way out.